The Malcriada podcast covers real-life topics, including the experiences of women and femmes, which is not all sugar and spice. With that being said, Malcriada Productions would like to offer a content warning ahead. Your mental health matters, yes, but it's important to be aware of what's happening in a sick world like ours. Thanks everybody, and enjoy the show. Hey guys, so first a little housekeeping. I just want to save this spot to welcome all the new subscribers and listeners. My last episode got a good amount of views on YouTube, and y'all were commenting and giving me feedback, and it was so refreshing. There was a comment saying that I need more pizzazz in my voice though, which was confusing because what do you mean by that? Like, I don't know. I'm not trying to be a character online with like a signature voice or whatever. However, I do notice, and I have noticed by reviewing my previous work, that I hold back a lot of passion because I'm scared to be perceived as like the loud Latina. I don't know. Like, I think like, oh, just be more fucking elegant or eloquent or articulate. Like, I don't want to do that sometimes, and it's exhausting, honestly. But like having to explain myself through my anger is so frustrating. How I'm gonna choose to see that comment is just to like be more authentic, be more playful, be more me. But yes, welcome to all the new listeners. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to building community with all of you. But enough about me. Let's start the show. The scene: a hot night in the plains of South Texas. Our subject, La Niña de Casa. Oh, she sits in her room, filled with curiosity, scrolling through the web, yearning for adventure, lusting after life. But her folks got her locked up with a strict curfew. Their daughter will never be a callejera. They cannot let their daughter be stained with the filth of the streets. Oh, the horror. But of course, she's more than welcome to bathe in the dysfunction of her family. In fact, her mother showers her with insecurities daily, and her soft, supple skin soaks up all the violence of her father. What will become of La Niña de Casa? Will she accept her role as a domestic being? Or will she dare to change the world? Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Malcriada, Thoughts of a Girl in a Sick World, and what a sick world it is indeed. This is your host, Sadra Knives, here to talk to you about all things femme, fair, and feared. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we're going to talk about La Niña de Casa. I will be referencing and translating quotes from Carmen Escobar's article, Una chica de su casa, o El gran mito patriarcal. A girl of the house, or the great patriarchal myth. Let's begin. What is a niña de casa? Niña de casa directly translates to girl of the house. Quote, the idea around the girl of the house includes a series of conducts and behaviors expected for being a girl and from being from a house. The girl of the house dominates domestic tasks alone. In this patriarchal fantasy, she performs them with great pleasure to the point of giving total meaning to her existence. Escobar, 2017. This concept manifests itself in almost every household with daughters. It is an unwritten rule that daughters are to be kept in the house after their obligatory duties, like their schooling, extracurricular activities, or work. This concept, like most of the ones I cover on this show, has roots in religious assimilation and colonization. The following verse is one that echoed the most throughout my childhood. Las casadas estén sujetas a sus propios maridos, como al Señor, porque el marido es cabeza de la mujer, así como Cristo es cabeza de la iglesia, la cual es su cuerpo, y Él es su Salvador. Así que, como la iglesia está sujeta a Cristo, así también las casadas lo estén a sus maridos en todo. Maridos, amad a vuestras mujeres, así como Cristo amó a la iglesia y se entregó a sí mismo por ella, para santificarla, habiéndola purificado el lavamiento del agua por la palabra, a fin de presentarla a sí mismo una iglesia gloriosa, que no tuviese mancha ni arruga ni cosa semejante, sino que fuese santa y sin mancha. Así también los maridos deben de amar a sus mujeres como a sus mismos cuerpos. El que ama a su mujer, a sí mismo se ama. Efesios 5, 22, 28.
It was supposed to give, but it did not give what needed to be gave to the highest of giving.
Like, I get what they were trying to say, right? Since Jesus did not have a wife, the best way he could set an example for husbands was through this comparison between church and a wife. Treat your wife like I treat my church, my home, my community. I make sure it's clean. I make sure to nourish it. I make sure it's taken care of. I think a lot got lost in translation because instead, a violent culture arose, one where women and femmes have been shamed, threatened, or forced into domestic submission since birth. In all organized religions, women are adjacent to men. Men are the subjects. Women, the objects that serve them, with no place for queerness except a small room hidden in the back. Women in society are taught to preserve the holiness of matrimony at their expense. But subscribing to these contradicting binary standards damages everyone's autonomy as human beings. As a result, we all have complicated relationships with our femininity and masculinity in our lifetime, regardless of sex. We see this in adults and children, shaming each other for being masculine or feminine in, quote unquote, the wrong way. Before we continue, a disclaimer. You didn't willfully place these standards on yourself, baby girl. You didn't invent the construct of private property, of houses and shit, and you certainly did not willingly choose to have your identity tied to it. I believe Niñas de Casa are not at fault for their position, and I also believe that fetishizing la Niña de Casa causes harm to all women and femmes. I bring this up because many think of las Niñas de Casa as more quote-unquote valuable and honorable than girls who do not fall into this category. But not all girls get the privilege to have a house. What about our displaced sisters? What about our houseless sisters? What about the callejeras? To reiterate, las Niñas de Casa are not at fault for the patriarchal systems that they're in. However, upholding these false standards will never fix them or make them go away. It'll just allow you to survive within them. Now, the question is, do you want to survive or do you want to live? Moreover, the concept of submission only applies to females from birth, whereas the concept of domination only applies to males. Quote, throughout this investigation, and after speaking with researchers and reading many others, and starring in scenes of contained anger in libraries, at no time did I find any reference or even suggestion of the idea of a boy of the house. Not even one. It is a concept that was just made for us. Escobar, 2017. The male sex is not bound by the house. He is an explorer, a conqueror, a subject of the world. The streets make him more experienced, more cultured. He has no curfew. His parents cannot tame him, nor do they try. Why would they? His value does not diminish based on his outings, or even his sins. He can simply just wash them off in the shower and sleep like a baby with no guilt. And the world doesn't bat an eye. People don't take care of their boys either. I have a whole episode talking about the hyper-sexualization of young boys in my In Defense of Edgar's episode, if you guys want to check that out. You see, I've heard of house cat, inside dog, housewife, Niña de Casa, but never have I heard a domesticating title for men, with the exception of maybe stay-at-home dads. However, the study More Men on the Daddy Track by Rich Morin explains an increase of stay-at-home dads along the years and their decrease in contribution to the household simultaneously. And even when a house husband or stay-at-home dads exist, they are met with shameful and degrading reactions, as if taking on a woman's position makes you less of a provider, and therefore a failed man. It's so frustrating to see how little men do for the women and femmes in their community. Also, it pisses me off. Moving on. So how does the Niña de Casa concept impact us? Not only does this concept teach Marianismo through the submissive holy wife sentiment, it also introduces rape culture amongst girls and femmes at a very early age. Another reason why La Niña de Casa concept is so popular is because it is believed to combat femicide and sexual assault. Quote, the girl of the house has to follow a pattern of behavior accepted by a fairly conservative structure or society. The church is an important factor in this concept, where if the girl does or dresses as she wants, talks to whoever she wants, kisses or goes to bed with whomever she wants, she is a girl who will not be taken seriously because she is not, quote-unquote, wife material. They are spoken of as of women who will end up alone, and they transmit to you that fear. If you don't behave in the same way that this concept demands of you, you will end up alone. End quote, Escobar 2017. And though ending up alone is a very valid fear for women and femmes, a more urgent fear that many of us face is femicide. And that is another issue, another myth that upholds this type of thinking, that by keeping the girls in the house, we're protecting them from assault. We're protecting them from crimes done against women in the real world. By shaming my daughter into a submissive role, I'm teaching her how to just stay in the house for her own good. And there could be nothing further from the truth. The issue is never keep your women in the house, keep your girls in the house. No, it's never that. And it should always be hold people accountable for their actions. And that's something that the government doesn't do. When cases of femicide are rising, when women report their assault, nothing is done. Because the people who are in power, the people who hold offices, are even perpetrating this kind of thinking themselves, or are predators themselves. And when I talk about the government being predators, I mean that to its full extent. We see that in all over the world, not just here, but all over the world, in all militaries and all warfare. Femicide is used as a war tactic. Soldiers purposefully target women, civilian women, in attacks to cause terror on civilians. So when I ask, why is that happening? Why are those actions being backed up by our governments? You cannot tell me that it's because women did not obey, because women didn't behave right, because people didn't behave that the way they were told to behave, and that's why this is happening. No. There's nothing that could justify that, and nothing ever will. Quote, both state and non-state actors perpetuate physical, sexual, and psychological violence against women and girls as a weapon of war. Such actions are intended to punish or dehumanize women and girls, and to persecute the community to which they belong. They are also used as a method of instilling fear, domination, and control. Targeted killings are premeditated with lethal force intentionally used against selected victims. End quote. Etherington et al. 2015. I'm setting this time aside for the women and femmes experiencing genocide and apartheid all over the world. This is your warning of extremely graphic content ahead. If you're not aware of what's happening to women, pregnant women around the world, I don't think you should skip this or ignore it. Just here's a fair warning. It's really, really graphic. I'm going to play the audio of the woman speaking on her experience in Congo, and then I will translate. So what this woman is saying that happened to her is that they killed her husband and they cut off his limbs and cut off his private parts and made her eat it, or else they were gonna kill her. And then they all raped her and threatened her life if she didn't oblige. And at the time she was pregnant, and in the video she has the baby that was in her stomach at the time this was happening on her chest.
Hello again. Fifth time's a charm, huh? Well, you already know my stance on calling for a ceasefire by now. But my purpose today is to speak to you as a father of a 2-year-old boy and a baby girl on the way. My wife, who's standing right behind me here, is 7 months pregnant, and we can't wait to meet our baby girl. So in honor of my pregnant wife and my future baby girl, I'd like to focus this speech on the pregnant women of Gaza. So I'm going to start off with one of the most horrific stories that happened just last week. An Israeli tank ran over a pregnant Palestinian woman back and forth until the fetus came out of her body. Do I need to repeat this again for you? Do you think I enjoy telling this story? Hell no. But do you need to hear it? Absolutely. Why? Because I'd like you to tell me how this act of pure evil is Israel defending itself. How this act of pure evil is targeting or thwarting Hamas. Imagine being a father that witnesses this happen to your wife and unborn child. Would you as a father sit there idly for the rest of your life doing nothing, or join a resistance against the oppression and barbaric murder of your people? This is just one of the thousands and thousands of stories. There are 50,000 pregnant women in the Gaza Strip, according to the United Nations Population Fund, and more than 180 births taking place every day. The complete breakdown of the healthcare system, coupled with the lack of food, clean water, and proper sanitation, means that 50,000 pregnant women and 68,000 breastfeeding mothers in Gaza are facing the risk of preeclampsia, anemia, bleeding, infections, and death. And even when they give birth, there isn't enough fuel to keep incubators running, which results in deaths of many newborns. Premature births have also increased by 30%. As stressed and traumatized pregnant women face many challenges, such as walking long distances in search of safety, running away from bombs, and being crowded in unsafe shelters. And there's now a significant increase in miscarriages, congenital abnormalities, stillbirths, mental health disorders, and maternal deaths. And now there is no space left for newborns and not enough medical staff to care for them, thus resulting in newborns being grouped together and being abandoned for hours on end. And just a couple days ago, the Israeli occupation forces arrested and detained a pregnant woman as a hostage with no charges, which they do regularly. And speaking of hostages, you're about to hear a group of dehumanizing hypocrites that are here today asking for the release of their hostages without a mention of the over 10,000 Palestinian hostages being held, a majority of which are held without charge or due process. I'm standing here right now as a father and a husband to a pregnant wife, looking you directly in the eye, asking you to simply make a statement as a city, as human beings, saying that this needs to stop permanently. If you're unable to do this simple gesture because of pressure from a group of people that think Palestinians are subhuman, specifically those that contribute to some of your campaigns, then you are a failure of a human being and are simply heartless. So in the spirit of newborns and babies, here's a little nursery rhyme I wrote for you guys. It's time for you to swallow your pride and push these lying Zionists aside, because now you can no longer hide. It's time for you to take the side of human beings that have had their rights denied. It's time for you to call for an end to this genocide. Thank you.
Thank you.
The first story came from at Papi Orion on TikTok. And the second one came from at Mo_Hams on Instagram. And don't worry, everything will be linked in the show notes. When I hear these stories, all I feel is anger. All I feel is rage. All I feel is indignation. And I am tired of seeing women and femmes, especially Black women and femmes, Indigenous women and femmes, having to be strong for everyone else, having to pay for the sins that they did not commit. And these stories are only 2 out of the millions of stories about these women all over the world in countries that are being occupied and extorted for their resources. Accounts to follow to stay updated on these topics and places to donate to help out will be linked in the show notes. So, to summarize, the reason I cannot stand the fetishization of La Niña de Casa is because it enforces hierarchy amongst women and femmes based on factors that are out of our control, such as who your parents are, where you're born in the world, and what kind of body you do have. We are not niñas de casa, but we are children of nature, children of the world. The myth of La Niña de Casa is just that, a myth, lies. Because if shaming our girls into submission actually empowered them, we wouldn't be in this mess, now would we? Now we've reached the point in the episode where I can share my experience and relation to the topic. So when I was a kid, my parents would always tell me, you are a niña de casa, so act like this. And it was so interesting because seeing how my body and my person was so policed was insane now as an adult. And it would happen like right in front of my face and no one would like stick up for me. And so that made me want to stick up for other people because I felt like that, like indignation. So like when they would say similar things to like my siblings, I'd be like, they don't need to do that. They don't need to act like this. They don't need to do that. Why should they need to do that? And my parents hate me for this. They hate me the way the world hates women. Well, they don't hate me, but like they hate me, you know? Like they're my parents, they love me, but they don't like me. Like we wouldn't be friends. If I was just a random ass person in the world and they met me, they wouldn't like me type shit. And it's really sad because these types of parents don't want kids.
they just want little like subjects to tell them, oh, thank you so much for giving me a life, when that's not going to happen. Most realistically, like when you decide to bring a child into the world, you shouldn't want to like control that child and control every one of their moves and have them do what you want them to do. And there's a difference, right? Like there's safety involved. Like for example, when I was little, I would want to go do sleepovers a lot. I would want to do that, but my mom would be like, no, stay. Like, you never know what's going to happen. Eventually, I was able to go to sleepovers. But that was always like a thing. Like they would always try to keep me in the house, but they wouldn't tell me like why, And if they did, it's because they're going to do this to you. They wouldn't tell me that's wrong. They wouldn't tell me, don't let anyone do that to you. No, that's not something that people would tell me. My older siblings would tell me, my family would tell me, no. In fact, they were the ones who would have me do things against my will the most. And so what does one do with this? What does one do with this type of curiosity? It made me want to rebel. I wanted to see what they were talking about. And for parents who use the tool of shame to educate and raise their kids, that's what's going to happen. You will get a child who wants to know and who thinks they know better, all because you just didn't want to get down to their level and explain things. You just wanted to be a dictator. You just want to tell them that's how it goes and that's that. I don't really want to go into the specifics because I'm too tired and it's too difficult and you're going to have questions. So I'm good. I remember I would sneak out. This is not, don't do this. Don't sneak out. And if you just say that you're going to go somewhere, it's better to say than sneak out. So don't do what I did, okay? This is bad. Because if your parents don't know where you are and you're a minor or you're really young, like that's an issue because they're responsible for you. And if you're hiding things from them that could compromise your safety, it's not good at all. It's not going to bring any good to anyone, okay? Okay, disclaimer over. I would sneak out. I would sneak out all the time. I would go to parties and ranchos and there'd be DJs. It was so much fun. But I had a friend who would take care of me. And I was, again, a very sheltered individual. So my friend would be the one who told me, okay, don't take any drugs from anyone. He'd always vet everyone. If people would offer like us like a blunt or like something, he'd always be like, what is it? Like, you know what I mean? And these are things that you don't think to do. Like if you are like, yeah, I like smoking weed or whatever you do, and they ask you like, they just like offer you like a hit, like your first thought is not like, oh, this person wants to poison me and kill me. That's not your first thought. And it's probably not their intention, but there's people who smoke spice and they do like harder drugs out there. Like we don't live just in a bubble and like drugs don't just live like on TV or like whatever. Like shit's hard. There's hard shit out there in parties and it's not okay. It sucks that it's so accessible. But yeah, my friend would always vet them and we'd get into trouble. The parties would always get shut down. The cops would come and we'd have to skedaddle. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun until it was a lot of fun until it wasn't, because then bad things started happening to me. Like, for example, I learned not to trust anyone, because sometimes people will do you dirty and they won't be caring for you the same way that you think they're going to care for you. And also, you never know how people are going to react or act when they're drunk. You don't know, because everyone is so different and everyone is going through so many different things, and you don't know if that's gonna be like, you know, their breaking point, or what's that's gonna create, you know. And yeah, so I would go experience these things, but I didn't want to tell my parents about them because I would think, oh, well, they're gonna kill me. I genuinely thought that, because my parents were like, they used to be very abusive, and they would get violent. I genuinely thought that. You might think I'm a little like crazy or whatever, but I genuinely thought that they were going to kill me or hurt me really, really bad. And they have. But like, oh, and it sucks that I had more fear for my parents than in strangers. But this isn't how my parents framed it. They were not like, oh, it's because we need to protect you from strangers with bad intentions. They didn't say that. They would be like, you better not be doing this because you do this. And if you do that, then you're this. If you're going out, they're going to say stuff about me. Like, if you're doing stuff, it's going to come back to me as a parent and like reflect on me. Like, it's like, yeah, hell yeah, it reflects on you, man. Like if your kids are sneaking out and like just want to get away from the home environment that you created, I have news for you. They are not the problem. I genuinely believe that there's no such thing as a bad kid. That's just not something that happens, because when you give love, you get love. If you nurture something and take care of it, it's gonna show. But if you don't, if you neglect it and you treat it like it's the thing that ruined your life, that's gonna show too. And yeah, it's crazy to see parents being more easy on like kids as like you age. Like, I bet that my older siblings were like, oh, you're so easy on her. But then, no, not even. I was a good kid. I was like the one of the only like good-ish kids. I feel like my parents have like a pipeline. It's crazy. It's so insane. Because like every kid left with like an anger storm breakdown. Like, that's how we left. Like, none of us left were like, wow, I finished my college. Now I'm going to move out. Thank you, parents, for providing for me. Like, no, it was not like that. It was like, fuck you. You know? And it's so crazy that they fail to see like the pattern when we're always highlighting it to them. And this is what the idea of La Niña de Casa does. It creates division. It creates a hierarchy, not only like amongst women and girls, but in the family as well. First, you have the husband, the father, the head of the wife. Bullshit, right? Then there's the wife, and then there's the son, and then there's the daughters. And then, like I said before, hidden in the back, maybe a queer little child, but we don't really talk about it. We don't talk about it. We're in denial about it. And they expect you to be grateful for this model, ancient, outdated, misogynistic, chauvinistic, disgusting, predatory system, this model. They want me to be thankful for that. Something that they didn't even create, but uphold so dearly because they don't know anything else. Why would I be grateful for? And I always wanted to know why. I always just wanted to know why. And I got my answer. It's because they don't even know what they're doing. Oh, that makes sense. Girls don't belong in the house, nor do they come from a house. We come from nature. We are nature. We belong outside with the sun hitting our face.
with our feet in the grass, and no one can dictate our lives and our actions but ourselves. Obviously, we have to be careful in this world, but we're allowed to have fun. We're allowed to do what we want. We're allowed to live. And if it's not written in the books, it's written in the natural law of the world. So, fuck you. All right, you guys. This is the second to last episode for the first season of Malcriada. Thank you for listening. If you have been keeping up with me this whole time, I appreciate you so much. The next episode will be the last one of this season. I'm very excited. I will be taking a little break to work on another project that I'm working on. And then I'll come back with season 2. You already know. But till then, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of Malcriada, Thoughts of a Girl in a Sick World. And what a sick world it is indeed. This was your host, Sadra Knives, signing off.